Another one who has a great historical perspective is Senator John Coghill. Welcome to Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Senator Murkowski and Senator Cantwell. Thank you for being here, and Senator Gardner. My pleasure to speak not only as a state senator, but I'm also voicing from the Citizens Advisory Commission on Federal Areas, and the testimony that you'll have before you is a compilation of things that we've heard from citizens all across Alaska coming to that commission. But for me, born and raised in Alaska, in the territory of Alaska, coming into statehood, I was 9 years old. My dad was part of the Constitutional Convention, and there was great expectation that came from statehood. And one of them was the compromise in Congress here was that we would be living off our land, as the governor said. We put together a wonderful constitution that has in it the natural resource article that is unique to American constitutions. We have been good stewards of what we were set out to do. But Congress ratified this Constitution saying, you can do that. So as the governor said, it's a compact that we made with the federal government. But along the way, in this compact issue, we knew we were going to have to settle some native land claim settlements. And ANILCA came along shortly after we were a state. And it rocked the state. It was a tough compromise even in Congress here. But we did it. And we settled with 40 million acres and many other issues that came from the ANILCA agreement. Out of that came this ANILCA law, that we would balance the ability of the state to prove its resources for an economy and take care of the national interest, as Senator Cantwell said. What it effectively did, and for those of you who don't understand how it impacts us in the state, it literally amended the statehood compact. And so what we've done now is we put ourselves in a place where if we can't get the promises given to us under ANILCA, our statehood compacts becomes null and void or raggedy in such a way that it's not recognizable, as the governor said. And with these broken agreements that you've heard already in testimony today, here's what the compacts, the guarantees, and the agreements that have not been fulfilled mean to us. It's first very disingenuous to a people who had that great expectation. We had this slogan, North to the Future. We were going to build a great state. We still have the opportunities. We have all the tools, but what's happened here is the erosion of our promises given to us at our statehood and the ensuing documents, and ANILCA being this now 35-year-old document. It's been disrespectful to the people, but it's been disrespectful to the law as well. We have had agency people, through regulation, literally able to, with guidances, change the statehood compact. This is just not acceptable. So, but it's beyond that, it's a cancer to our economy. We can't get people to make investments in our economy knowing that the regulations are shifting with political winds. It's not now related to the law, as it should be. And so we're appealing that ANILCA needs to go back and take a look at the law, and there are suggestions within the document that I'm giving you that is probably easier to read than hearing my testimony. But it's also strangling opportunity. We have wonderful resources that were promised us to be part of what the 750,000 people in Alaska can build an economy with. We have villages that are literally in holdings in federal areas that are strangled from the ability to produce an economy because they can't hunt, they can't fish, the transportation system has not been put together as promised by ANILCA. We have small communities that are literally dying because they can't move forward. We have people who will not invest in those communities for that very reason. They literally have to not only go through the law, but they have to go through a whole series of litigations in order to make anything move, mining especially. I'll give you one example, and my time is short. The 40-mile mining district, they're literally redefining it and putting it into a conservation unit contrary to the law. So in my testimony, you'll see suggestions that can increase our cooperation, bring us back to the law, and suggestions to Congress in helping to get the agencies to honor the law.
Just this year, again, we all know that Fish and Wildlife has proposed another 12 million acres of wilderness there in ANWR. And the agencies are arguing, and I'll probably direct this to you, Senator Coghill, that their organic acts and FLTMA, the Federal Land Planning Management Act, allow them to make these recommendations, that it is not contrary to ANILCA here, but that we have the ability within the agencies to basically provide for these interpretations and allow for such recommendations to be made. We talk a lot about administrative creep, regulatory creep, and overreach. Is that what we're dealing with here, or is it more pernicious? Great word, pernicious. Go ahead, John.
Senator, thank you very much. The Organic Acts go back quite a ways. We had the Alaska Organic Act, and then the Federal Policy Lands Act, FLTMA. But ANILCA was meant to specify some very specific land uses and guarantees to the state, which were not outlined in FLTMA. In fact, they were very general. So I think the answer to that question is in the balancing of the interest, you found a huge interest in the conservation of the lands and the preservation of the lands, which many people in Alaska were okay with. It's just that they didn't want their livelihood taken away. So on the one hand, you have people who, through the D2 lands discussion all the way up through the passage of ANILCA, we're looking at, okay, conservation, preservation, we understand the beauty that we live in. As a matter of fact, many of us in Alaska have done very well, both at the state level and at the local level. But we have to look at the land in Alaska as productive land and land for conservation. So we want to conserve our forests, for example, but we don't mind harvesting them. But the preservation wilderness designations within, say, Tongass have continually crept in and taken over guarantees that were even allowed under the Tongass National Forest ruling. So I think ANILCA was very, very specific, where FLTMA was very, very general. It was meant to overrule and specify many places. So some of the things that I think Alaska felt that we got left out on was when we put together in the ANILCA Act that there would be a land use council where Alaskans would be able to sit at the table. The tethering kind of got loosened there, and we probably would have been able to have that discussion about the difference between what's going on with the Federal Land Policy Act and ANILCA there. But as Mr. Tangent brought up, we had a hard time getting that discussion even with the Land Council. But since the Land Council has been sunsetted, I think we have lost the ability to even sit at the table with agencies and remind them of the ANILCA promises.
But it's your belief, is it not, that were we to reinstate the Alaska Land Use Council, that would be a forum for us to engage? And
I think that's one of the answers.
You stated that as well.
Senator, I do believe that's one of the answers that's going to help tie us back to the law. One of the issues on withdrawals is the 17D lands that now should be withdrawn. In fact, BLM actually recommended to Congress some years ago that they be vacated. But based on those lands still being held, not withdrawn, now we have some of these newer issues like the administrative withdrawals that are so contrary to Section 13 of ANILCA. So, yes, I think we have to get those things settled so that clear title can be given to the state, the native corporations. Those things have to be settled. So I think the public land orders that are under the 17D rule should go away. I think Congress should act. That would be one of the recommendations that you'll see coming from the Citizens Advisory Commission.